ماذا يفيدك أن تسمى حافظا وكتاب ربك في الفؤاد تمزقا
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه. نعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. صلى الله تبارك وتعالى عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وبارك وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا. أما بعد. We are commencing Surah Al-Mutaffifin, and this is another Makki surah, and according to some of the Mufassirin, this surah is Madani, or part of it is Madani. There is ikhtilaf. And the reason for that will be explained shortly. Surah is a very powerful and direct surah. It addresses the pious and the impious head on, and it calls out their deeds and the consequences of their deeds, not holding back anything. So there is no subtlety in this. It's very plain and simple and strong, and that is the language of the Makki surahs predominantly. It's a very strong, powerful, vivid language. Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَيْلُ لِلْمُطَفِّفِينَ. Wail means doom, destruction, ruin. And some have said that this is a particular valley in Jahannam, a particular pit of Jahannam. And all of these things are correct. Generally speaking, wail means destruction. So, ruin of this world and ruin of the hereafter is what the word implies. Mutaffifin, taffa means for something to be light or something to be less. Light in the sense of insignificant or deficient. And tatfif means to lessen something by taking something away from it. It also means to try to deceive someone into taking what they think is the full amount, when in fact it is not the full amount. So it has been translated as the curtailers, people who curtail. They skim a little bit off and then they submit the payment. What we're talking about is in sales, in transactions, when a certain amount is due, whether it's the item sold or it's the payment. So take the example of someone selling a kilogram of wheat, which is supposed to have 1,000 grams. But what the person does is they decrease a little bit, they skim a little bit off of it, and it's only 900 grams, but they sell it as 1 kilo. When they take the payment of 1 full kilogram. This is an example of tatfif. Another example is that if a payment is being made and payments were usually made using gold or silver. So if a certain commodity cost a certain amount of gold, a certain number of grams of gold, person would skim some of that gold off of it and give them just a little bit less. Take the full commodity, but pay a little bit less. An example of this is, because we use paper money most of the time, is, take out some of the notes in the hope that the person's not going to notice. If it's a large payment, somebody uses small bills and the person looks at the stack, it looks satisfactory, but in fact there are a few notes missing. So it's a form of dishonesty and defrauding someone in a small way, in the sense that this is not huge amounts of theft or fraud that are taking place, but it's small, and the person does it over and over and over and over again. So small fraud or cheap fraud is what we are talking about. So wailul lil mutaffifin, destruction, ruin, woe is for the curtailers or the defrauders. People who do this, they do their business in this way, they purchase in this way, or they sell in this way. So this is a form of khiyana, it's a form of betrayal of trust, it's a form of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forbidden. أخذ أموال الناس بالباطل, to take someone's wealth away from them illegally, unlawfully. In the case of the wheat, the person was only entitled to a payment equal to 900 grams, but he took the full 1 kilogram's worth of payment. That extra payment that he took, this is bil batil. He did not have the right to take the money in exchange for those 100 grams. So the money for those 100 grams was haram on him, but he took it. Similarly, in the case of the person buying with gold, those few milligrams or grams that he subtracted, or those couple of notes that he kept out of that payment, it was haram for him to withhold that from this person, because the person was entitled to the full amount. That amount that this person has kept back, and whatever he took in exchange for that thing that he took in exchange is haram on him. Now, what's going to happen is, in the case of the guy selling the wheat, one could say that 100 grams of his income, or let's say 1/10 of his income, if this is how he sells his wheat, 10% of his income is haram, and it is. But here's the problem. That 10%, when it's going to mix with his rizq, it's going to destroy all of it. It's like a toxic substance. It's going to contaminate the rest of his rizq, and barakah is not going to be reduced from the 10% that he is taking unfairly. Barakah is going to be reduced from the entire rizq that he has. So haram wealth, unlawful wealth, is a means of destruction, and Allah Azza wa Jal is not just telling him something that's going to happen to him far in the future, that destruction is for them. There is actual destruction. This little bit of wealth that the person is bringing in and consuming is going to ruin everything. So destruction for them in this world, and destruction for them in the hereafter. Allah describes the acts of these mutaffifin. الَّذِينَ إِذَا اكْتَالُوا عَلَى النَّاسِ يَسْتَوْفُونَ وَإِذَا كَالُوهُمْ أَوْ وَزَنُوهُمْ يُخْسِرُونَ. So when they measure to take, they take in full. And when they measure to give, they decrease. إِذَا اكْتَالُوا عَلَى النَّاسِ, when they measure to take from people, يَسْتَوْفُونَ. Istifa means to encompass the entire amount, to take the entire amount. So the guy is, let's just say for example, if the rate of the wheat is $1 for every 100 grams, so this guy is going to count all $10 and take them. When it's time to count the payment, you count it in full. When it's time to give, however, when it's time to weigh and give, he's weighing less. أَلَا يَظُنُّ أُولَٰئِكَ أَنَّهُمْ مَبْعُوثُونَ. Don't these people believe that they are going to be raised from their graves? They're going to be resurrected? Now, hadith tells us some pretty serious things about this type of transaction or this type of behavior. In one hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says that 5 things occur as a result of 5 actions. خمس بخمس ما نقض العهد قوم إلا سلط الله عليهم عدوهم. There are 5 sets of behavior that result in 5 sets of consequences from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The first set of behavior, people who break their promises. So when people become accustomed to breaking their promise, or they make it a regular thing, they're promising and they're breaking the promise. So now look at the consequence that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And remember, consequences only come from Allah. And the consequences are based on our deeds. Every time we do a deed, we're sending it up. Every day after Fajr and after Asr, the shifts of the angels are changing. The angels meet in these 2 salats, Fajr time and Asr time. And then one group stays, the other group goes. When these a'mal go up, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends down decisions accordingly. So if whatever went up from individuals and collectively, from communities, from nations, it was positive, then based on that, positive results come down from the sky. Positive in the sense of favorable. There is an increase in rizq. There is an increase in peace. There's an increase in love and friendship. There's an increase in so many things. And this happens every day. If the acts that are going up are bad, then unfavorable circumstances are going to befall the people. And if there are a few good things and a few bad things, then there's going to be mixed results. And if the bad that is going up is outweighing the good that's going up, well then guess what's going to happen? So you have people that are regularly breaking their promises. This is a deed that's going up, it's going to come down with some consequence. The consequence of this particular act, as explained in this hadith, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala imposes their enemies upon them. An enemy is somebody who wishes you harm, who wishes to strip you of your rights, who wishes to keep you in a state of oppression, to keep you in a state of difficulty, of torment, of being deprived from opportunities. That's your enemy. Somebody wants to close the doors of progress for you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will impose such people on them. As a consequence of what? Of having this habit, this pattern of breaking promises. That's one. ما حكموا بغير ما أنزل الله إلا فشا فيهم الفقر. Decisions, settlements, resolutions to problems. When they make their resolutions and decisions contrary to the decisions revealed in the Qur'an. In other words, they have another set of standards, they have another set of rules by which they make their judgments and decisions, then the result of that is poverty. Poverty is going to inflict them. And there are different kinds of poverty. A human being sometimes is so naive. We're so naive, we only think what we are taught to think sometimes. We are taught to think that a lot of money flowing in is wealth, so we consider it to be wealth. even though there is much more money flowing out. We consider a lot of money coming in to be wealth, or to be a state of wealthiness, even though the problems that come with it may by far surpass that. Similar is the case of someone who has wealth but is not able to access it, is not able to benefit from it, is not able to enjoy it. And what to say about the wealth of someone whose debt by far surpasses their assets? Which is where a large percentage of Western civilization is right now. So they look at these tokens that they may have in their hands. Could be a car, could be a home, but they don't look into the fact that how much debt we are involved in. So anyone who has $100 but owes $1,000 is not wealthy. But this person keeps looking at this $100 and says, yeah, I got $100. Really, really pleased with that 100. It's not wealth. So when this becomes a behavioral pattern, then the entire community is entrapped in such a circumstance that even though they are earning, they're not becoming wealthy. What a strange and frustrating predicament that a person spends their entire life earning, trying to save, trying to build something, but still they cannot be considered wealthy. It's a tragedy, isn't it? So that was number 2. The second thing is وَلَا طَفَّفُ الْمِكْيَالِ إِلَّا مُنِعُ النَّبَاتِ. When people do this kind of defrauding, playing with the scales, weights and measures, when people start compromising and playing with scales and measures, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deprives them of their harvests. Their harvests do not yield to their full potential. وَأُخِذُوا بِالسِّنِينَ. And they are inflicted by drought, by famine, by those circumstances that don't allow the crops to grow. وَلَا مَنَعُوا الزَّكَاةَ إِلَّا حُبِسَ عَنْهُمُ الْقَطْرُ. And when people withhold their zakat, people don't pay zakat, then one of the consequences of that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala withholds the rain from them. So this is a hadith of narrated by Hakim in his Mustadrak from Burayda radiyallahu anhu. And there are similar ahadith in Tabrani, in the Muwatta of Imam Malik. The summary of all of this is that there are numerous ahadith that indicate that whenever a group, a community, a nation starts becoming unfair in their dealings, in their transactions, they start deceiving people, then the doors of risk are closed. This is the bottom line. All of the ahadith agree to this. It cannot be that there is a person or a family or a group that makes their living by tricking or by deceiving, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases their risk for them. This will never happen. So that is the state in dunya. And then their state in akhirah, Allah says, don't these people believe that they're going to be raised لِيَوْمٍ عَظِيمٍ, from their graves on a very great day? But it's not just great in the sense of its magnitude, it's going to be for these people, for some people, an extremely terrifying day. is going to be the most terrifying day. Some narrations mention that the most pain that a person endures, is at the time of death. And death is the easiest of all the phases to come. It is the lightest of all the phases to come. Now, people who are going to be raised on the Day of Judgment are going to be raised in different states. In different states of peace and tranquility, or of horror and terror. That is going to depend on how they spent their lives. So they're only going to be raised based on how they spend their lives. Now, يَوْمَ يَقُومُ النَّاسُ لِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ, perhaps the most terrifying thing on that day is that people have to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah Azza wa Jal has an account of every single thing. Imagine if somebody was to, just picture in your mind for a minute, that somebody had a camera on you for a few weeks of your life, for every second of your day and night. And you had to confront this person. And they were watching you every single second. How would you feel going in front of them? I think everyone would feel hesitant and feel a little bit shy and embarrassed. That not 1 second has escaped this person's observation. Imagine standing in front of Allah Azza wa Jal, who knows every second of our life, not a few days or a few weeks or months or years, our whole entire life. And not only was He observing, He wasn't just observing, He is now going to take us to task for everything. So these people who have their earnings in this way, they should fear لِيَوْمٍ عَظِيمٍ, a very grave day, a very terrifying day. يَوْمَ يَقُومُ النَّاسُ لِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. And as you know, people aren't going to be standing comfortably as if they're in some kind of a air-conditioned lounge. It's going to be a very terrible state of standing up. There's going to be no shade. The sun is going to be very, very low over the heads. And a person will only have enough space that their 2 feet can fit. That's it. The only space that a person has is the amount that their 2 feet can take up. That's it. There's no more space than that. And they have to stand. And in this little space, they're standing unclothed, and they are sweating according to their deeds, according to their misdeeds. And the blazing heat of the sun is unbearable. And for some people the sweat is up to their ankles, others up to their knees, others up to their waist, some up to their chest, some right up to their chins. And some people, half of their mouth is going to be submerged. وَمِنْهُمْ مَن يُلْجِمُهُ إِلْجَامًا. For some people it's going to be up to here, where half of their mouth is submerged under their sweat and half of it is above it. And there are some people that are going to be drowning in it. So that is the kind of standing that one will have to endure. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses these people and says, Kalla, you should not do this. You should abstain from this. Stop this. Inna kitab al-fujjari lafi sijjeen. The record of the sinful people is going to be in sijjeen. Now sijjin generally means a tight cubicle, a tight place, a very narrow, small, insufficient space. and it is commonly used to refer to a jail or a jail cell. Sijjin is it's a word that conveys the meaning of a very terrible jail, an extreme kind of a jail. At the same time, it's talking about the records. So their records are going to be in a jail. What does that mean? So Mufassirin have mentioned that kitab is referring to the deeds that are written in their record. The deeds that are written in their record of deeds, we've talked about this a little bit, they are going to be kept in this jail, this custody. In other words, the people of those deeds, the people who did those deeds are going to be kept in a jail. So Allah says their account is in the jail. Their account is in jail. It's referring to those people. Sijjin. And others have said that this is referring to the place where their books are kept. The actual records of these people are going to be kept not in an honorable place, in some archives, but it's going to be kept in a jail. Just like they are going to be kept in a jail situation, so are their deeds. So you have probably heard in hadith that when a sinful person, a disobedient person goes into the grave, and all kinds of terrible things happen, and one of those things is that the grave closes on the person and constricts the person so much that their rib cage, it intersects, it overlaps, their ribs go into each other. So yes, this is a torment, this is a jail. So similarly, their deeds will be kept. And the third tafsir of this is also mentioned in some ahadith. The Prophet ﷺ was asked about what will happen to the souls of the believers, the arwah of the believers. And there's a sahih hadith which says that the souls, for example, of the martyrs, or the souls of the believers, they will be fluttering about in birds, or in the form of birds fluttering about the gardens of paradise. So in one hadith, the Prophet ﷺ was also asked, when he was asked about the souls of the believers, he told them that they're going to be like birds, or in the form of birds, or within birds, flying around, fluttering around Jannah. And the souls of the disbelievers or the disobedient people are going to be in Sijjin. So that hadith indicates that Sijjin is a jail for the souls as well. So their deeds and their souls are going to be kept in Sijjin up till Yawm al-Qiyamah. And similarly, Illiyin, as is coming up ahead, in the Kitab al-Abrari lafi Illiyin, it means a very, very high, lofty place. It's going to be the place where their books, their records are kept, and it's going to be where their souls are kept. And there, the high, lofty places of Jannah, they'll be enjoying the fragrances and the enjoyments of Jannah. So, moving on. وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا سِجِّينَ. What do you know about this Sijjin? كِتَابٌ مَرْقُومٌ. It is a book that is imprinted. So, is the Sijjin itself a book that is imprinted? Rather, it means that in Sijjin, these books will be kept in an imprinted form. In other words, they can't be erased. Marqoom, it means permanently etched, permanently written. No amount of time will allow it to fade, and nothing can erase those books once they have been placed in that specific location of Sijjin. وَيْلٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ لِلْمُكَذِّبِينَ. Destruction on that day for those who deny. So what got people there, what got their records put in that terrible place and their souls locked up in that terrible place? It was their denial. Allah Azza wa Jal gave them some information, some facts. They were supposed to accept it, believe it. They denied it. Prophets ﷺ came with sets of teachings. They denied those teachings. They came with warnings. They denied the warnings. They came with promises. They denied the promises. That is what led them to all of these types of acts. So Allah says, woe on that day will be for those who deny. In other words, what we should be doing is every time something comes to us from Allah Azza wa Jal, from His Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, our responsibility should be to accept it, to affirm belief in it. سمعنا وأطعنا آمنا به كل من عند ربنا. We have heard and we have obeyed. Whatever Allah says, we believe in it. This is coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the attitude of a believer. But for those who deny, Allah says, wailun, woe to them, destruction for them. الَّذِينَ يُكَذِّبُونَ بِيَوْمِ الدِّينِ. One of the first things, the foremost things that they deny is the Day of Judgment itself. Of course, if they believed in the Day of Judgment, they would reflect on the consequences of their actions and say, no, I shouldn't do this because I'm going to be held accountable, I'm going to be held responsible, I could be punished for this. But someone who says, no, there is no Day of Judgment, once you die, that's it, you're finished. You're going to mix into the ground and dissolve. Your bones are going to rot and that's it, that's the end of you. So if you don't believe in that day, then you say, well, no one's going to hold me accountable, I might as well do whatever I want to do. Do whatever I have to make a living, do whatever I have to get rich, do whatever I have to gain power, do whatever I have to in life. الَّذِينَ يُكَذِّبُونَ بِيَوْمِ الدِّينِ. Allah says, وَمَا يُكَذِّبُ بِهِ إِلَّا كُلُّ مُعْتَدٍ أَثِيمٍ. No one can deny the Day of Judgment except someone who has the habit of transgressing and the habit of sinning. In other words, once a person breaks free of the limits set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they look at it as restrictions, they look at it as shackles, they break free of it and they get into the habit of going beyond those limits. Every time, every day, every week, every month, they're going beyond those limits. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set limits, for example, for how we earn. This person is regularly going beyond those limits. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed limits as to what kind of physical relations we have, under what conditions we can have them. This person has no regard for those limits. They're regularly transgressing those limits. Allah has put limits on how we can use our eyes. This person is regularly transgressing those limits. How we can spend our wealth, person is regularly transgressing those limits, passing beyond, breaking the boundaries. A person who gets into the habit of this, it becomes their habit, their mind starts thinking in that way, and it becomes difficult for them to change. So, instead of changing, this person begins to justify what they're doing. They start justifying it. They start saying, well, this is not just acceptable, this is the best way to live. This is the only way to live. And someone says, no, you should not. You say, why? What am I scared of? What am I scared of? And to justify themselves as correct, they will go as far as negating the entire system of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the entire system of accountability. They will go against all of that just to prove that what I'm doing is okay and I should keep on doing it. And this is happening all around us. A person gets involved in some kind of an act, some kind of a behavior. It is displeasing to Allah, but the person will become so stubborn about it that no, I'm not going to leave this. So much so that they will say, no, there's no such thing as this in deen. There's no such thing as this in people who don't pray. Some of them, their hearts become so hard that they say, no, you don't need to pray in order to be a Muslim. I'm a Muslim, I don't pray. A woman, for example, who does not take the hijab, she may go to the extent of saying, no, there's no need for hijab. And so on and so forth. So a person who gets into the habit of transgressing and the habit of sinning, mu'tadin, athim, the ultimate result of this person is that they're going to end up denying the Day of Judgment altogether. You say, forget it. Like we hear people saying, we'll see when that day comes. We'll see when that happens. What else happens to these people? إِذَا تُتْلَى عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُنَا قَالَ أَسَاطِيرُ الْأَوَّلِينَ. If you say, no, Allah has said this, Allah Azza wa Jal says this, don't deny it. Brother or sister, Allah has said this in the Qur'an. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has said this. What do they say? We've heard this before. Asatir al-awwaleen. These are fables, legends, stories. These are stories of the old people. These tales have been passed down for thousands of years. Don't tell us this stuff. Asatir al-awwaleen. Kalla. Allah says no. That is wrong. These are not fairy tales, nor are they allowed to transgress like this. What has really happened here is a process has taken place whereby the effects of their deeds have become permanent on their hearts. Kalla bal rana ala qulubihim ma kanu yaksibun. Their deeds that they made a habit of doing have soiled their hearts. Soiled, stained, rusted their hearts. So this tells us something else. When we commit a mistake, we should make tawbah from it right away and wash the effects of that sin off of us. Not just erase our account, but wash away the effects of that sin from our heart. And ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to remove all of the bad effects of that sin and to save us from all of the evil effects of that sin. This is extremely important. Otherwise, if the effects of the sin remain, then the heart starts getting harder and harder and harder. It becomes more and more and more difficult to resist that sin, and it becomes, a person feels more and more compelled to commit that sin over and over and over again. And a time comes that no amount of advice, no amount of reminder, no amount of appealing to that person's sense is going to be of any benefit. رَانَ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ مَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. And that's what happened with these people. They continued to transgress, they continued to sin, they continued and continued until their hearts became hard, and now they're not even ready to accept the concept of Qiyamah. The Prophet ﷺ has taught us Sayyidul Istighfar, the best of all forms of istighfar. And this is something that every Muslim should recite every day, at least once. At least once we should recite this every day. And if possible, we should recite it frequently. It is the best form of istighfar taught by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allahumma anta rabbi la ilaha illa ant. Oh Allah, you are my Lord, there is no one worthy of worship but you. Khalaqtani, you have created me. Wa ana abduk, I am your slave. Wa ana ala ahdika wa wa'dika mastata'at. I am bound by my commitment to you. I confess that I am bound by my commitment, by my promise to you, that I'm only going to worship you. I'm only going to obey you. Mastata'at, to the best of my ability. But of course, oh Allah, I have sinned, I have made a mistake. A'udhu bika min sharri ma sana'at. Before asking for forgiveness, he doesn't say, oh Allah, forgive me just yet. The first thing he says is, A'udhu bika min sharri ma sana'at. Oh Allah, I seek protection in you from the evil of what I have done. Because a deed, a misdeed or a sin has many, many evils that it brings. On the heart, on the mind, on the face, on the rizq, on the relations with other people. Every sin comes with a host of evil. Oh Allah, save me from the evil of my own deeds. A'udhu bika min sharri ma sana'at. Abu'u laka bi ni'matika alayya. Oh Allah, I openly confess about your favors upon me. I openly admit that you have uncountable favors upon me. Wa abu'u bi dhanbi, and I also openly confess of my mistake. Look at the confession. Look at the process. Oh Allah, I admit my mistake to you. I confess that I have erred, I have sinned. Faghfir li. Oh Allah, forgive me. فَإِنَّهُ لَا يَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبَ إِلَّا أَنْتَ. Because there is no one else who can forgive me except for you. So, in this, we find, in this istighfar, we are taught the process of what we are supposed to go through every time a mistake happens. And when we don't go through this process of istighfar, then the effect of that sin, it becomes solid. That stain becomes permanent. And it stays there. And as long as that stain is there, it's going to pull us towards that mistake again. And then the sin will be committed, and another stain is going to appear, it's going to encrust itself on the heart, and the effect is going to remain. It's going to deprive us of so many good things. So, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from all sins, apparent and hidden. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cleanse our hearts from the effects of our own mistakes and errors. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to make sincere tawbah, so that we can break free from the shackles of our own mistakes. Every time we commit sins, we're shackling ourselves, we're putting restrictions on ourselves, we're depriving ourselves. And the biggest deprivation, it's mentioned in the next ayat. We will continue this inshallah in the coming week if I am here. And this surah requires deep reflection. We should read this surah over and over again, because it teaches us the secrets of a'mal. It teaches us those subtle effects of a'mal that accumulate over time, and what it leads to, and what things we can do to stop ourselves from that process. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq and understanding. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.